Hello everyone, Team Conti Sim Performance Track Guide for Darlington, Week 9, 2024 Season 2. Michael Conti here with the NASCAR NextGen Cup car, going to take you around for a 30-lap run at the historic Darlington Raceway. The term race the track and not the cars around you, I don't know if it originated at Darlington, but it's definitely very relevant here. Really easy to get caught up in what's going on around you and lose sight of what's most important. That's taking care of the car and taking what the track will give us. Darlington is a low grip, abrasive surface. However, with the track conditions that we're forecasting for this week, there's quite a bit of grip to fire off, but it's truly in your hands as far as what will happen with that grip. As much of a broken record as I think I sound like at this point, 9 weeks into Season 2, it is so important to save the tires early on. Get a little bit of lap time up to gain a lot back later. So as we go through this 30 laps, I'll talk about how I'm driving, why I'm doing what I'm doing, some things that I'm thinking about as I'm making those decisions on when to push and when not to, and hopefully that translates into something that you all can understand and apply to your driving heading into next week. I'll start off with some gear info. I know that's typically a hot topic as we get into the week, so just let's get that out of the way early on here. As you can see, heading down the front stretch, I'm keeping it in 4th gear. You may hit the chip early in the run depending on the draft, how hard you're pushing, and the track conditions in your race, but that's okay. Hitting the rev limiter a couple times is not a big deal, and it's going to pay off later on when we have a bit more RPM to pull us up off the corner as those times fall off. Into 3 and 4, we're downshifting from 5th to 4th, so upshifting to 5th down the back, and then downshifting to 4th into turn 3, and then like I said, leaving it there for the rest of the lap. Talking about the line and lift points and braking and things of that sort, we're using brake at both ends of the track. Much more brake in the 3s, it's the sharper end. Safer barrier protrudes out a bit into 3, and we'll show that from outside the car in a bit here. As soon as I see that safer barrier poking out, I start to brake into 3 with a good amount of initial max brake pressure. Into 1, it's just going to be a little brake right there, about 10%, just to encourage the nose to turn in off the wall, so I can shape that entry so that on my approach up to the wall, in the center of 1 and 2 before I have to lift, I have some really good front turn available to me. If you straighten out the entry to turn 1 too much and have not so much of an angle through the corner and you're heading toward the wall in a really straight way, you're not going to have any turn. So right here, if I really chop off this entry, I'm going to get really tight at this point. I'm going to have to back way out of the gas, and I'm not going to be able to get this turn back down here. So it's important not to turn in too early into 1. It's also important not to roll in there with too much speed. That's where that 10% of brake really pays off. Into 3, you can see I'm using about 30% max brake pressure on entry, and trying to be as disciplined as possible to enter low, just about with the left front touching the apron, and then hang it there throughout the rest of the corner. Some really good grip on that bottom, especially in a clean track like we've got here. Again, not running my max pace potential right here, a couple tenths off of it just to preserve some tire for the back half of this 30-lap run. And you can see at both ends, I'm just gradually increasing throttle center off, not a light switch, not really attacking the throttle, just trying to allow the car to work before I commit. On my approach up to the wall, you'll see right there I'm not getting to 100% throttle at any point, maybe about 70% throttle as I head up the hill. And then off of 4, super important not to get to 100% throttle too early, or else you'll start to slip that right rear as you cross those seams. The grip definitely does change across the surface here at Darlington. In 3 and 4, it seems like the bottom's really grippy, and as you go farther up the track, you lose grip slowly. So if we enter here low, we slide up just about a half a car width or so in the center. But right here, you notice that first seam, I'm trying to stay below that as long as possible, because as I start to cross that seam, I've got less and less grip available to me. really going to start to slip that right rear on exit. Through 1 and 2, very important not to start your turn down off the wall too early, or else you'll chop the exit and probably smack the fence. As we go outside the car here in the next lap, I'll start to point out some spots in the wall or beyond the wall with the goal boards to show you when you should be turning off the wall in 1 and 2. It's critical to nail that. Critical to nail it in terms of pace and tire wear as well. So we'll pause the car for a second here and head outside. Show a different perspective. See my trading paints is working really well today. Into turn 1 right here. Let's break it down. So initial lift point into turn 1, about 10 laps into the run. A little brake overlap right there. People ask me, is that okay? Yeah, that's okay. In a perfect world, I probably wouldn't have that overlap at the beginning of my initial lift, but just barely lighting up brake. But anyway, most important thing is where I'm lifting. And I'm lifting way before these black oval logos on the inside wall here. This is critical to having good front turn into turn 1. When I coach privately or even in our Sunday sessions, when people ask me to look at their laps at Darlington, the number one issue that I find is that we like to overdrive entry into 1. We like to really drive in deep, then use a whole lot of brake, but it doesn't allow us to get back on the throttle past this point where you're just about clipping the apron. So lifting very early, well before the black oval signs in the inside wall. If we look from inside the car here, where's my cockpit cam? There it is. If you look outside the left window, you can just kind of see them back there. If we look at the wall, that might be a better reference point. Maybe from inside the car. From entry, we are 1, 2, 3 red squares away from entry, just about. Either way, moral of the story is lift early. Max brake pressure is about 10% here on, we'll still call them somewhat fresh tires. We're still running about the same speed as we fired off here. It's about 10% max brake pressure. And you can see I'm already turning off the wall here. I want to just clip this part of the track where my mouse is circling with the left front. Trailing brake all the way through that entry. And now we're free rolling. So free rolling. And as I get to this apron to track transition, I just want to start to put some throttle back in it to drive me up the hill. The only way I can start putting throttle back in it right here is if I've bled off enough speed. And the two ways to do that are what we talked about. Early lift point, back your corner up, and use just a bit of brake to help it slow down. So I'm going to clip the apron right there and throttle just past it. If you're going all out for a short run to the finish or qualifying lap even, you'd probably throttle up a bit sooner, but for the purposes of tire management and pace management and all that good stuff that we love to talk about on these intermediate tracks, we're just backing everything up a bit. So throttle up just past that apron track transition. Drive up to the wall. Still have a good amount of wheel in it, but we're not trying to hold this thing. We're not trying to hold the car down. I want to float it up to the wall. Get the right sides above the seam. You'll see the throttle right there. We're just past 50%, kind of plateaued. Maybe increase a bit here. But just not trying to rush throttle, because the more I rush throttle, the less front turn I'm going to have, and the harder it's going to be to get this thing pointed and set to turn back down the hill past center. So you can see right side's well above the top seam. Left sides are just going to come above it as well. Still got a bit of space between the right side of the car and the wall. You can see these marbles up here. Yeah, that's not great if you start to get into those. And then also the wall arrow really seems to have a tendency to suck the car in when you get too high. Plus the wall isn't exactly smooth here. You can kind of see this pokes out a bit. So give yourself some breathing room, especially in race conditions. It's critical to keep the fenders onto things, so if you got to give yourself a bit of breathing room, that's okay. So now we've sustained throttle at about 50%. We're sustaining line above the top seam. And as we get to the Sport Clip sign on the outside wall and the Geico sign, you'll start to notice that I come off the wall. So let's see here. Still about even with the fence, still about even, and now I'm just starting to turn off just a bit. Yeah, you can see sport clip sign. You can just tell, yeah, that right rear is a bit closer to the wall than the right front is, and that's significant in terms of understanding where I'm turning down. Still pretty even wheel input here. Maybe a few tugs to the left. Really not much though. Pretty smooth. Very smooth wheel, very smooth throttle. Just slowly easing it back down the track. So I've got good angle to have a straight exit off. Slowly increasing throttle. Could I be full throttle here, wide open? Probably. What's that going to do? That's just going to scrub these right sides. And what does that mean? Well, that means that I'm going to have less available tire later in the run. So keeping a little bit of throttle out of it just to keep the tires on it. Nice line right here, just about getting down to this apron. Don't want to cross over it. That'll really upset the car, but you want to get as close to that apron track transition as possible to give yourself room to come up off it too with a lot of speed. Wheel straight, max throttle, off of 2. Up to 5th, right there. And then if we look up the road here, that's the safer barrier poking out that I talk about. That's pretty much where my brake marker is into 3. At least that's what it feels like from inside the car. Let's head up the track here a little bit and see where my actual initial lift is. Pretty much right there. Okay, so wall pokes out. Got your red square right here. It's probably a good reference point. It's really the last red square before the entry to 3. And you can see coming out of the throttle, quick lift, immediately on the brake. This blip right here is the downshift to 4th, so it's very quick. About 25% max brake pressure. That'll increase as the run goes on. And then it's a very quick turn in, so I can get that left front all but on the dashed white line. There's some really good grip right on the very bottom. So you'll see I enter on the bottom, slide up just a smidge in the center. You can see there's some room now between the left side of the car and the dashed line. Trying to stay below the seam. Again, as I talked about earlier in this video, the grip seems to fade away ever so slightly as you cross the seams and head up the track on exit, and even in the center too. So to keep the car straight and not on 2 different spots of grip, it's just a good practice to keep it below that seam as best as possible. But just sliding up a bit in the center so I've got some room to turn back down on exit. Lots of just slow roll into the throttle here. And you'll see I'm not rushing to 100% throttle. Really keeping it nice and tidy. Left front on the seam. Right rear well away from the first seam as long as possible. And now I can have a nice straight exit with full throttle up the track with very little slip. So at speed here, let's watch from outside the car for a lap or 2. A little bit of brake, on throttle just past that apron to track transition. Very smooth, consistent throttle through that second apex. Up to 5th down the back right there. Safer barrier pokes out, big brake. Good amount of turn on entry. That's okay, you'll get that wheel cranked on entry while you've got the front grip. You'll see a little wiggle right there. Very, very easy to lose the rear on exit of 4, especially as the run goes on. All the way up the track, pulling it off at the sports clip sign or thereabouts. Down the back stretch. Hard brake, early turn in, keep it on the bottom. Throttle off the corner. So I'll cut out for a couple laps here. We'll watch a couple laps from outside the car, and then a couple laps with some silence on my part from inside the car, and then I'll come back around lap 20. So as you've seen the last couple laps, outside from me trying a bit too hard off of 4, the goal here is to be as smooth as possible with your inputs, where you place the car. Is really trying not to overdrive, trying to take what the car gives us, so we've got good grip available to us as we head into the longer run, which at Darlington can be upwards of 60 plus laps. So it's critical not to overdrive it, or else it's going to be a long run before you can get tires on it. Some things to look for as far as handling goes at Darlington, whether it be with our setup this week or just setups in general. With this next-gen car, the way that it makes downforce, you almost have to sacrifice a little bit of handling in 1 and 2, so you can make it compliant in 3 and 4, that underbody aero that we love to talk about. So typically entry to 1 and 2 will start to suffer a bit later in the run as far as getting a bit tight. That's where you can mitigate a lot of that early in the run by backing up entry and using that little bit of brake, so you can slow that front heat pressure buildup, so that when you do get to the point in the run where it wants to go away, you've just got a bit more to work with. In this run right here, I did feel it a bit, but honestly it was really neutral throughout the run. Very happy with how it drove. And then conversely, 3 and 4, it's not entry, but it's really exit that gets a bit loose, really from here all the way to the point where we get on the straightaway. Very easy to lose the right rear. And again, you can manage that by just keeping a bit of throttle out of it. If you're getting tight in the middle of 3 and 4, that probably means you're not rolling long enough or not shaving enough speed off on entry. So if that happens, just slow it down a bit more. And then also really pay attention to the steering lock I'm using in 3 and 4, and match that to yours if you're watching this video after you've made some laps. I've noticed in the past a lot of us struggle with the amount that we actually have to turn in 3 and 4. You really have to turn a lot more in 3 and 4 than you do in 1 and 2, so don't be afraid to tug on that wheel. As long as you shave the speed off on entry and you're not slipping the front by going too fast, turning the wheel's okay. It is okay to turn the wheel. Moving back into looking at some of the lap time fall-off trends here. If you recall, we started this run in the 2s and 3s, approaching the 30 flat mark here, 24 laps into this run. So about 3/4 of a second of fall-off so far. I'll lose another 1/10 and a half or so between 25 and 30, so just about a second of fall-off in 30 laps versus where I started the run. And you can really manipulate that. You can start the run a couple tenths quicker maybe, but you'll fall off that much quicker. And that fall-off will follow you all the way through the end of the run, whether it be until a caution comes out or you have to pit for fuel. So definitely need to practice before you get to a race your pace management. See what works best for you. Track position is key here. I'm sure most of us watching know that, but if maybe you're new to this car or this is your first time at Darlington, welcome. You've chosen one of the hardest combos there is on the oval side of the sim. So as much fun as this track can be when you get it right, it can be really frustrating when it's just not going well. And half the battle is just starting up front and having good track position from the drop to green. Super hard to pass here, as you can imagine. With the way the line is in 1 and 2, there's really not a lot of passing opportunities unless you can kind of shortcut that 1/3 to 2/3 mark and get under somebody and take the line away. Hard to complete a pass in 1 and 2, and then also 3 and 4 is tough too, with everybody wrapping the bottom early, and then if the line moves up to the middle or top, it's just hard to clear someone off of 4, and then you get stuck behind them in a 1 and 2, and it's just a pain in the butt. So start out front, practice your qualifying. Practice your qualifying. Do it before you get to a qualifying session. And if you start up front, more times than not, you'll have an okay day, as long as your race pace is decent. 2 tires will probably be good here this week, especially for a short run to the finish. Gain that track position and hold on is what I would say. Don't marry yourself to 4 tires. There is fall off here, but probably not enough to be able to make up ground too quickly on a short run to the end. So keep 2 tires in mind. You can see here for the last couple laps of this run, I'm really pushing, and this is what pushing at Darlington looks like versus pace run. We'll see a lot more movement in the wheel, a lot more movement in when I'm using throttle and how aggressive I am with correcting throttle mid-corner. Take lap 30 right here. Driving it a bit deeper, just trying to see what I've got left in this car. Not going to be going any faster by driving harder, but I'm just trying to level off that fall off and just see if I've got anything left that I can extract. And honestly, if memory serves me correct here, I start to drive harder and I go slower, so just further drives the point home that you have to drive the track. Overdriving does nothing, and you take care of the car, they'll take care of you. So 30 laps complete right there, and I ended at 30.183, so just about a second worth of fall off. So yeah, that's a 30 lap run around Darlington in the next gen car. I think we went over quite a bit here over this run, but as always, you all are more than welcome to reach out with questions. If you're one of our quarterly or yearly subscribers, definitely keep active in our Discord, stay engaged. I am always happy to review replays, answer questions, do whatever I can to help you guys find success in the track. Other than that, that is it for Darlington. We are approaching week 9 of season 2. Season's flying by, and season 3 is quickly approaching. So let's have a good week this week. Let's enter the last quarter of this season strong, and hopefully we see some more wins on the board from our TCSP guys. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll see you again next week. Take care.